I became much more confident. I think I was confident before my apprenticeship, but I just became much more confident in the direction and the vision that I wanted to pursue as well. Yeah, I think the quality of teaching, to be honest, I don't think it was as high. I think I was able to learn some concepts and I was able to, earn my degree. I think in a way, it did make me feel, more mature and more independent. And most importantly, it just helped me feel more prepared for the future because the things I was learning on my apprenticeship were actually kind of relatable to, the work I'll also be doing after the apprenticeship.
How did you feel about learning part-time while working full-time?
I think it's just a balance. I think some of the concepts I was learning while I was, working full-time within the university environment, I think they were good. Some of the different concepts I was able to use within, what I was using at work. So, for example, I was in a tech role and I was learning about the software development lifecycle. And I think a lot of those different concepts I was able to use within my actual role. So it was fun. However, I know for a lot of apprentices, the relationship with the training provider, whether that's degree apprentices or lower levels of apprenticeship, I think it's not amazing. But for me, I was able to go through with it, but doesn't go for everyone in my course. There were definitely a couple complaints from people in my course about the training provider, but for me, it was completely fine.
Did you feel like you got a proper university experience?
I think I did. I definitely had the components of it. I think the university that I went to, it wasn't a massive university. There was only around, within a classroom at one time, maybe around 40 of us. So it wasn't crazy. However, being able to, be in London and also be able to kind of attend different events that were being thrown by the overall kind of University of London. So the amalgamation of like a lot of different universities in London, I still was able to kind of have a really good experience. So I think if you're open to making friends, being in London helps. But if you are willing to go outside and obviously be a part of things like the Black Apprentice Network and a lot of the fun things that we do, then you're able to have the university experience. In some ways a bit better if you come on a holiday too.
How did you feel when you had deadlines for both work and university?
I think it was times it was difficult. I remember specifically when I was writing my dissertation, it was kind of difficult to balance what I was being asked to do on the Salesforce side and also what I was being asked to do on the university side. But transparency is everything, communicating what you have to do, communicating that you need some time to perhaps do this assignment, it's super important. So I think it's what you make of it. Obviously you're going to have to work hard. You're going to have to work hard on making sure you excel on both fronts. However, with transparency added into it, I think it's definitely manageable.
Did you feel supported by your university and lecturers?
I think on the university course, I felt sufficient support. I didn't feel a crazy amount of support. University, it's very different to A levels. They're going to stop holding your hand as much. And, it's going to be on you to kind of complete the assignments, to do some of the learning yourself. But, I feel like I felt a sufficient amount of support from my training provider on my apprenticeship.
How did you feel about the quality of teaching compared to a traditional degree?
Yeah, I think the quality of teaching, to be honest, I don't think it was as high. I think I was able to learn some concepts and I was able to, earn my degree. However, I think the quality of teaching, to a certain point, maybe it's because, there's only so much time you have with your training provider when studying your apprenticeship. But, I don't think I got the exact same quality as a degree, but I did get a degree at the end of it, so it's fine.
How do you feel like you've changed since you started your apprenticeship?
So much. Oh my days. I think there's a whole, it's not just the apprenticeship, it's the overall maturity thing of, going from 18 to 21. But just being able to know the landscape or on a professional focus, just to be able to understand the landscape of a company, able to understand what a company does, able to understand how a company makes money. Also, again, since I was working within tech consulting, just knowing how the development cycle sort of looks like and collaborating within a team and talking within the team, I became much more confident. I think I was confident before my apprenticeship, but I just became much more confident in the direction and the vision that I wanted to pursue as well. My work ethic grew because, it needed to grow because of the different things I did throughout my apprenticeship time. My ability to, talk to people and create those introductions to people improved over time. A bunch of different things. If you throw yourself into the experience, you're going to see the changes that you want to see in the positive ways in which you want to see it.
Do you feel more mature or independent than your friends at uni?
I think a little bit. Being able to actually be in a work environment and know the expectations that are needed within that environment, I think helps. Also, I moved out for a number of years doing my apprenticeship, so, it helped me feel, a bit more independent. I was earning my own money and, paying rent and doing all those sorts of things and taking care of different things around the place that I was living. So I think in a way, it did make me feel, more mature and more independent. And most importantly, it just helped me feel more prepared for the future, because the things I was learning on my apprenticeship were actually kind of relatable to, the work I'll also be doing after the apprenticeship.
How do you feel about your future career prospects now?
I think it's great. I think being able to earn the certifications at the place I worked at beforehand kind of builds a buffer on, the sorts of roles that I could pursue. Obviously, the world could change, in a split second. But I think right now, I think the skills I learned within the company I was in, it means that I can go into another company and, be pretty valuable or be a pretty qualified candidate for a certain role. So, and I was approached by like a number of different recruiters while I was on the apprenticeship I was on as well. So I definitely feel like I'd built a certain skill set, and that skill set would put me in a certain income bracket if I wanted to kind of test the job market again.
Did you feel like you missed out on anything by not going to university full time?
I think a little bit. Like I missed out on the, being in dorms with other people and, having fun. I don't think I missed out on a crazy amount, but because I think I definitely had my fun moments. But I think probably just the dorm and being able to be surrounding that university environment. Also, within first year, I think a lot of people talk about within first year, it's really a discount. Like it's not really taken into account when it comes to your grades. For my qualification, first year was the same value as third year. So not exactly the same because I did my dissertation, but it was very similar. It had a huge weighting on the grade I was going to get for my degree. So I think maybe that experience of also being able to mess around in my first year. But I think the benefits that it's given me my apprenticeship is well worth like what I experienced. And I think in terms of African and Caribbean people go through their apprenticeship now, being able to have those fun experiences is very different now that the Black Apprentice Network is around as well, which wasn't around when I started.
How did you feel about work-life balance?
That's interesting. I worked a lot during my apprenticeship, both on my apprenticeship, on my degree, on, building band. I think there was a bunch of other things, but a bunch of things that I kind of worked on. But, that was my choice. But yeah, I think being disciplined, which is not easy for everyone, and it became easier for me over time throughout my apprenticeship, is needed, and structure is needed, and being able to kind of focus on tasks when you need to focus on tasks is needed. And if you're able to do that and keep a good balance of it, you'll be able to kind of have your fun, but only if you have those things. If you don't have those things, it's going to be pretty difficult.
Did you feel like you found a good routine?
Do I feel like I found a good routine? I think it changed depending on the project that I was on. In terms of a daily routine, there were some projects where the first meeting began at 9, and there was some projects where the first meeting began at 10, and there were some projects where there was meetings throughout the day, and there were some projects where my day was pretty free for the most part. So in terms of routine, I think during the workday it was highly variable on the project that I was on. But to be fair, like I was on those projects for months on end. So I had the same routine for months on end usually, unless there was something, crazy that happened on the project and I needed to work a bit more. In terms of after the apprenticeship, I think it was I definitely got into a certain routine on if I had to do certain tasks after work, then do those certain tasks, or if I wanted to pursue certain fun experiences throughout my apprenticeship, pursuing those fun experiences. But definitely times in which, I didn't have much balance, but there was times in which, I was able to kind of have a lot of fun. But I think it comes in seasons rather than day to day. You have seasons of really working hard and you have seasons of really, chilling out a little bit. So I definitely say in terms of seasons, I had a balance, but in terms of the day to day, highly variable.
Looking back and looking forward, how did you feel when you were starting your first few months?
I felt like it was just a whole new world to me. I think, I don't reflect on this enough. Like it was a massive learning curve kind of being in the company and even just understanding what exactly the company that I was in actually does and how it makes money. I think it was it was an eye-opening experience. It was an experience that I'm super grateful of. And, most apprentices will experience just a massive learning curve coming into their first couple of months. And it may feel like a lot of things are coming at you at the same time and you can't really understand it. But past like the 6-7 month mark, I started to get it more. And even though I was still definitely learning in the months and the years afterwards, it wasn't as drastic as a learning curve at all.
Do you feel like it was the right path for you?
Yeah, 100%. I think being able to, Black Apprentice Network wouldn't be around if I didn't choose that path. And also, I think the skills that it gave me, the company that I joined, it was an amazing company. The people that I met, being able to be on an apprenticeship at such an amazing company, made a huge difference, and I wouldn't, change it for anything.
How do you feel about the space of apprenticeships and long-term thinking about students that want to get into their apprenticeship?
That's so interesting. I think apprenticeships are much more competitive now than they were when I applied. And I am wary about people that, may have been from backgrounds where they don't know how to kind of play the game of being able to excel at different stages of the application process. I am scared of that, and how some more educated peers can have an upper hand at that. But I think, at Black Apprentice Network, we're just trying to, demystify that and just make sure that people put their best foot forward at every stage of the application process. I also think, and this kind of relates to my last point. I think people are catching on more and more about the value of apprenticeships and also degree apprenticeships and how it could really, change your career, and you could be in this environment when you're young. And also, I think now apprenticeships, specifically degree apprenticeships, has been around for a long enough period of time where you can really see a difference in the career progression of people that are apprentices versus people that didn't do an apprenticeship in certain cases. So I definitely feel like apprenticeships, they're an amazing option. It's becoming much more recognized. It's much more competitive. But I also think that now a lot more companies have done their apprenticeships for certain periods of time where, the apprenticeship programs are pretty much to a higher standard, because, there's some companies that were just walking around like headless chickens, not knowing how to do their apprenticeship programs and structure it correctly. So now there's more of an education on that point. And that just leads to, especially for companies that, again, have that long-term view of apprenticeships and have been running it for a certain number of years, they're just able to help their apprentices have a much better experience.